Jerry, Tom Wilson. Tom Wilson. Tom Wilson, how are you? Go ahead.
Good afternoon, judges, participants, students. Great work today. And I'm introducing Team Tango. You will have 20 minutes to present your solution to the judges. You will be given a warning when 5 and 2 minutes remain. After 20 minutes, the presentation will be stopped immediately, and no information will be considered after the 20 minutes have lapsed. Following your presentation, there will be a 10-minute question and answer. You will be given a warning when 2 minutes remain, and the question and answer session will be stopped after 10 minutes. You may begin whenever you're ready. Do you have your paper?
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming to see our presentation. We're really excited to share our ideas with you and really excited to talk through some of our strategies that we came up with. So I'm Gabby, I am with Rachel, Griffith, and John, and we are going to talk through a little bit of background, and then we are going to go into our strategic recommendations. Then we'll talk a little bit about our financials, and then end it off talking about some more qualitative impacts of our ideas. So just to set the scene, we were given a case really heavily about sort of sustainability, especially in the agriculture sector. So we're looking at emissions having to do with agriculture, and we're also looking at just emissions overall, seeing a really large increase, especially within the last 100 years, and heavily from the agriculture sector. So as a result of these increases, we've seen sort of a lot of different movements from different parts of the world to mitigate these problems, including the Paris Climate Accord, which involves something called NDCs, which is where each country, a part of this accord, says sets an emissions goal and tries to reach it. And as a result of the Paris Climate Accord and these NDCs, we've also seen kind of the popping up of carbon markets, which is kind of having to do with certain industries are going to have a harder time lowering the amount of emissions, especially relative to their profits, because it can be really expensive, and other industries are going to have an easier time. So just the idea that certain industries can kind of give their right to pollute to an industry that might not reach those targets as well is another idea that has popped up more recently. So just to talk about Bayer's position within this, we believe that Bayer is really well positioned to sort of set a really big impact in this space. Bayer has already had this science for a better life outlook since the beginning, and even recently they started the Bayer Carbon Initiative, and it's only been 2 years, and we've seen already 1.7 million farmers join on. They have some proprietary technology with their field view machine, as well as just a really big network, and farmers really trust them. We also see kind of competitors in the space, and we see that they are behind. So an example would be some other really sort of larger competitors in terms of the technological side of things, competing with FieldView specifically. They're not really as much of a household name. People don't really know what they are. Additionally, a bigger competitor sort of on the chemical life sciences side, BASF, they started a very similar initiative only 3 months ago, or 2 or 3 months ago. So it's very new and far behind what Bayer has already started. So as we can see, the competitors are behind, and also the consumers are hungry. They are ready. They want to be more sustainable. Farmers specifically, their livelihoods depend on the health of their farms, and so they are ready to sign on to something that can help them. So thinking about a few things that Bayer has already done in their Bayer Carbon Initiative, we learned yesterday about sort of the triple win idea. We have farmers, the world, and the industry. So Bayer is helping farmers by giving them new strategies and data in order to sort of improve not just their carbon output, but also improves their crops, and so it kind of is very beneficial to the farmer as well as to Bayer. Additionally, the world, if we reduce emissions, if we are working towards this kind of zero carbon idea for agriculture, that's going to help the entire world and help mitigate a lot of what we're seeing in terms of climate change. Lastly, the industry. So the agriculture industry, especially looking at sustainability, is changing very rapidly, and Bayer is taking the charge in trying to create solutions that not only help the industry but also make money. And every business wants to make money, and they're at the head of helping figure out a way to help the environment without hurting their bottom line. So that being said, there's also a few key problems and opportunities we see. One thing that we wanted to highlight is we had this map in our sort of field view information packet, and we noticed that field view is available in a lot of places around the world, but it's also not available in a lot of places around the world, and there are a lot of different reasons for that. So a few reasons we came up with and we learned about yesterday are technology and also political barriers. So if we think about farms in rural areas, a lot of times farmers don't have the kind of access to 4G, 5G networks specifically that would be compatible with the field view technology and allow them to collect this data and learn from this data. Additionally, every country kind of structures their environmental departments differently and has different ways of counting the carbon emissions and figuring out like industries and industry specific, and so it becomes a little bit more difficult for Bayer to get involved when it's harder to tell how much money they can make on like sort of the carbon credits end of things. So we've seen that as an issue as well. Finally, we see some opportunities. So Bayer already works with 1.7 million farmers. And this, we've already talked about how the industry is ever changing, right? So it's going to change, for years to come. And so there's opportunities within sort of the farms that they've already worked with to implement new strategies, to bring new ideas. These farmers already trust them. And so we believe that it's a really good way to sort of continue those relationships. So now I'm going to hand it off to Grihith, who's going to tell you a little bit more about each of our recommendations.
So I'll be talking a little bit about a recommendation, and more specifically, how our recommendation is strategy-centered. So at a glance, really, I want to walk you through our thought process when coming up with this recommendation. So the first problem areas we identified is that Bayer is extremely successful in some tapped markets, but there are also many untapped markets that Bayer is yet to enter. When we were coming up with this proposal, we decided that we would use a three-pronged approach. The first solution in our recommendation is going to attack both untapped and tapped markets. We want to capitalize on Bayer's success in these established markets, but we also want to mitigate risk, but also try something new in some of these untapped markets. The second part of our proposal will specifically focus on entering untapped markets, and the last part of our proposal will specifically focus on establishing the growing trends already occurring in Bayer's tapped markets. We believe that this is an extremely comprehensive strategy and will enable Bayer to grow and expand quite rapidly in the coming years. In terms of opportunities and problems that we saw with this case, the first that we identified was connectivity. We know that smartphone usage is increasing worldwide, but at the same time, it's not increasing at the rate that you would want it to in order to empower farmers to use some of the digital tools that Bayer currently offers. As you can see, 3G and 4G percentages in both Africa and Asia are relatively low, and so we really want to see how we can identify connectivity issues and really find a solution that solves that. The second problem we identified was investment. One of the main problems discussed in yesterday's presentation was that changing the way private capital is invested is the future of making businesses more sustainable. So we want to find a way to deploy capital in a more effective manner that makes Bayer more money, but also helps farmers and enables sustainability at the same time. And then the last part of our recommendation focuses on acquisition. We know that Bayer has been very successful in acquiring companies in the past, and we really want to continue on this trajectory and enable Bayer to become a key player by finding companies that fit within its portfolio. Some of the target geographies that we're going to be looking at in this recommendation, again, are going to be in tapped and untapped markets. So Bayer is already a key player in the Americas and Europe. For the purposes of this presentation, we're going to be specifically focusing on the Americas for the tapped markets. And then for the untapped markets, we know that Bayer has been a key player in Southeast Asia and South America, specifically India and Brazil. We're going to be using Vietnam and Peru as the new countries to sort of enter into this market. This takes me to the first part of our solution and recommendation, which is that Bayer should implement an SMS integration into its current field view technology, and this is going to expand both its connectivity and also enable more data collection. We did a quick product market fit analysis for the field view technology, and we know that it's a digital tool that farmers have been using quite extensively around the world, but we do think that there's an issue to solve with connectivity. This is sort of side-by-side comparison of field view and SMS. So we know that FieldView is the #1 brand platform in agricultural space, and it provides great insights and data-driven outputs for farmers to make informed decisions on their land and crop. But at the same time, for the farmers who lack smartphones, iPhones, iPads, we want to enable them to be able to view their data in an effective manner, and this is where SMS integration sort of comes into play. We know that 5.5 billion people currently use SMS daily, and that number is supposed to go to 6 billion by 2025. And SMS open rates are 98% worldwide, so we know that farmers will be open to this sort of technology. Very simply put, our recommendation is to integrate SMS into the existing FieldView technology in order to enable farmers to see more accurately their data that's collected on their plots. And how we're going to go about doing that is basically we do a software integration which enables SMS technology to be put into the FieldView device. And basically, all of the information and data that's collected on a farmer's field is immediately relayed through SMS to the farmer's cell phone. And this sort of goes around not having a smartphone. And we feel that these increased data points and greater connectivity will be a key role in expanding Bayer's business model.
All right, so now I'm going to talk about DAFs and how we will fundamentally reshape the private market. All right, so your first question must be, what is a DAF? A DAF, or a donor advised vehicle, is a mechanism for wealthy individuals, high net worth, in order to get tax breaks by investing in philanthropic initiatives. We feel that at Bayer, you can partner with these huge funds in order to work on societal problems and encourage sustainability. We chose this plan for 2 reasons. Firstly, there are a lot of assets under management for DAFs. They have a lot of money available, and not much of it has been allocated. Secondly, environmental sustainability is the big thing right now. Climate change is the most serious threat to our world, and everyone recognizes that we need to solve it. There is a lot of interest in developing real and substantive solutions to climate change. We identified 2 areas where DAFs can come in handy in a lot of places. Firstly is Vietnam. They are very interested in solving climate change. They recently implemented a carbon credit market, and they have agriculture as 20% of their GDP. Also in Peru, there's a lot of niche farmers with the top 15 producers of a lot of different foods, and the government is actively seeking foreign investment to recover from recession. As you can see, there's a lot of capital available. There's $78 billion in assets in these DAF funds, and only $27 billion has been granted thus far to charities. This leaves us with a $51 billion potential to use and change sustainability. This plan will happen in 3 steps. Firstly, farming improvements in developing markets will increase sustainability. This will lead to Bayer implementing carbon reductions through more efficient and more sustainable mechanisms. And then lastly, Bayer gets rewarded, the bottom line, with credit reduction that they can spend in markets such as Vietnam. And I'm going to hand it off to Rachel to talk about the third part.
Yeah, thanks, John. So our third part of our recommendation is for Bayer to invest and acquire 2 separate biochar companies, specifically Biochar Now and Northeastern Biochar Solutions. The reason why we think this recommendation is really profitable is because it aligns with Bayer's current goals of trying to reach carbon neutral farms in their capped markets. Specifically in this recommendation, we're focusing on North America. So what are these 2 companies doing? Biochar Now makes biochar from heating wood and biomass with little to no oxygen, being overall sustainably friendly on a really large scale, which is perfect for Bayer's large connected network of farmers. And the second company, Northeastern Biochar Solutions, has a really unique system to making biochar. They recycle biosolid waste products into nutrient-rich biochar through a patented dehydration and thermal process, allowing them to be the most sustainable way to make biochar today. So let's talk about why we chose biochar specifically. First, biochar improves soil fertility and enhances crop yields by up to 4.7%, meaning that farmers are going to really significantly increase their profits through using this. Additionally, adding biochar to just 10% of croplands would sequester 29 billion tons of CO2. And lastly, biochar helps combat the uncertainty that farmers have to experience and suffer with every year. For instance, it increases the land's ability to withstand droughts and floods due to the increased overall soil health. So let's specifically talk about why we chose these two companies. As for Biochar Now, their specific pore design of their charcoal allows for it to hold up to 5.6 times its weight in water with little to no evaporations, trapping that moisture into the soil. But additionally, the pores also resemble concrete, which attracts healthy soil microbes to improve plant growth. And finally, it also electrostatically attracts phosphorus and potassium molecules, which are really crucial to plant growth. As for Northeastern Biochar Solutions, they have a patented thermal treatment process, which their autothermal continuous operating state takes the heat produced while making biochar and released to repower the next cycle of their reactor, making it a really sustainable process. And third, they also process all forms of biomass, from human, agricultural, animal, and forest waste, so they're able to increase their efficiency of the amount of biochar they can produce, perfect for Bayer's large-scale operation. So let's talk about the implementation of this recommendation. Biochar is a really new industry and not many farmers know about it. So the way that we're going to combat this is to create an in-depth explanation and educational system of what biochar is. We're going to tell farmers what biochar is, what benefits it brings to their farms, and how they can correctly implement it into their farms. Then, at selling it at a discounted price compared to the average market price of what biochar is, we're going to be able to make sure that these farmers are incentivized to stay with Bayer as they take on this biochar initiative. Then, as we deliver it to these farms across North America, they're going to be able to implement it within their farmlands, and since they already have field view technology in place, they'll be able to receive personalized feedback on how effective the biochar is in terms of helping their soil health. So now let's talk about the supply chain and how we're going to get this biochar to these farms. So because we strategically picked two companies, Biochar Now, which is positioned and located in Colorado, as well as Northeastern Biochar Solutions, which takes place out of Saratoga, New York. By strategically having these two companies on both coasts of the country, we're going to be able to efficiently and effectively deliver these products to farms all over the country and the continent. So how are we going to incentivize farmers to join us as we take on biochar? We're going to do that in two ways. The first is we're going to tell the farmers about all the benefits biochar brings us. It reduces irrigation and fertilizer requirements, we see significant improvements in crop yields, and it also overall improves soil health. Then the second way we're also going to incentivize is tell them all the struggles that they're going to face when they don't use biochar. For instance, there's high irrigation and fertilizer costs that can be up to more than $2,000 per year. Additionally, when there's low crop yields amidst times when there's low crop prices, these farmers are really affected financially. And third, there's often poor soil health from constant monoculture growth, which biochar is able to solve. So now I'm going to talk about the financials of our overall recommendation. So our project is expected to have a profit in year one of $202 million. And using a growth rate of 13.2% in biochar's industry, as well as a 14.3% growth rate in the agritech industry, by year two we expect this number to hit $274 million, $311 million in profit by year three, and $352 million in year four. But even more importantly is in year five, we're going to hit just barely under $400 million, showing that our project and recommendation is overall financially feasible and a great move for Bayer to make. So now I'm going to pass it back to Gabby to talk about the overall impact of our recommendation.
Thanks, Rachel. So you guys all heard about how profitable our ideas are, but I wanted to highlight a few qualitative impacts of our ideas. I think that that's also a really important part of this project. So if we think about profit, we also think about things that could possibly lead to profit, such as having more data. So we learned in the case that data is one of Bayer's biggest competitive advantages, especially in this space. And with our SMS technology and expansion of this project, we're going to have access to even more data and even more data points across the world. So having access to that is not only going to help Bayer, it's going to help every single farmer, because every farmer now is going to have access to more data, which is going to have sort of a positive impact effect as we go forward, or a positive feedback effect. So the other thing is thinking about Bayer's brand. So everyone knows Bayer as a very big player in the pharmaceutical industry and the life sciences industries. We want everyone to know Bayer as the biggest player in sustainability, especially for agriculture. And with this project, and by expanding this project even more worldwide than it already is, will get consumers on board to support Bayer and buy products from Bayer, because every consumer, especially right now, is really, really passionate about the environment and about supporting companies that have initiatives which support the environment. So if you look sort of at the slide, you'll see that we believe, the sum of profit data and this brand recognition is going to lead us to Bayer winning in the sustainable agriculture space. So thank you very much for listening to our presentation, and we are happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Team Tango. Judges, feel free to start grilling.
You start.
Well, a great presentation and good analysis. As a first question, then as the other judges asked, I may come back to the follow-up question. When you're looking into the opportunity for Bayer to invest, right? Bayer's got a lot of money, right? And how did you what was the rationale to come up with what area they need to invest?
Sure, I can take that one. So I think when we're looking at what areas Bayer should invest in, we wanted to first look at geographies that they had already been very successful in. From our research, it seemed that Southeast Asia was a very successful market, specifically India and parts of Oceania, even China. And so we wanted to sort of expand within those geographies, but go to countries where Bayer has not yet tried. So hence we decided to use Vietnam as one possible case. And then in terms of South America, we know that Bayer's been very successful in Brazil as well. And another country with similar sort of economy we felt was Peru. And there's a lot of sort of historical and cultural implications in terms of the environment and wanting to protect sustainability there. So that was also an area we felt would be worth investing in, and that would have positive ESG impact as well.
Thank you, great presentation. I would like to know a little bit more about how you selected the two targets for acquisition.
Yeah, of course, I'm happy to talk about that. So biochar now biochar specifically as an industry is a really new industry. So they're only estimated at value around today at around $300 million as an industry. So biochar now, which is the first company we chose to acquire, is the company that produces biochar on the largest scale. So we thought because Bayer is such a big company, that would be really profitable for them. And this is how we got the finances of it. They've raised $4 million so far today in funding, and they've given up 20% of equity for that, which is why they have a $20 million valuation as a company. And using agriculture's 13.7% premium average for the industry, we believe it would cost around $23.5 million to acquire them. And then as for our other company for Northeastern Biochar Solutions, one reason we picked them is again having the position of them being on the opposite coast of the US, but the other reason is their proprietary information and technology. The way that they're able to make biochar is the most sustainable way to do it because they're able to recycle the energy and heat used when they heat up biomass to make the charcoal. Constantly in the cycle throughout that reactor, so they're using the least amount of fuel and energy possible to make it, and we believe that really goes and aligns well with Bayer's initiative to become carbon neutral.
Thank you.
Yeah, very nice presentation actually. All of you prepared very well. You all went through like one after the other, so very nicely done. A quick question on the money piece. You said like at the end, like $202 million profit. And that's amazing, I wish it can be done that quickly, and it went very seamlessly. So did you think through how foolproof that is?
Yeah.
And you came up with like a number, it's not approximately, but it's like 202. So I was like curious.
Yeah. I can walk through the calculations of how I got to that number.
Sure.
So the way we did it is specifically we focused on our biochar acquisition to be focused in North America. So with Bayer having around 1.7 million farmers worldwide, we took the percentage rate of how many people are in North America versus the other 20 countries that they're partnered, or other 18 countries they're partnered with, and came out that there's around 243,000 farms in North America, with each of them having an average square footage of a farm of 475. And based on the fact that right now biochar is typically used you use around 1 gallon per 4 square feet of biochar, we came out with the amount of how much biochar we're going to be selling to these farms each year. And with the average increased crop yield that these farmers are going to get, they make a lot of profit from it, and they only require 0.15 tons for their farm on average. So that's why they're really willing to pay a pretty high price for biochar. So we only give them a 10% discount compared to the average market price. So the average market price for a ton of biochar is around 2.5K, but we're willing to give it to them or sell it to them for around 2.3K. So that's how we kind of get to the overall revenue, along with the addition of selling those carbon market tokens. And then we, of course, include in year one the acquisition cost as well as the production and delivery cost, which it costs around $403, per ton to both produce and to deliver.
Yeah, and then in terms of like the other portions of our recommendation, we included sort of the costs in that as well. So for example, in the SMS part of the presentation, you know, we believe that we're probably going to need a couple teams of engineers, and so we included kind of average salary of engineers in the agriculture space, and we did 2 teams of 3 engineers each, you know, 1 on Vietnam, 1 on Peru, and included that number in the expenses as well.
A follow-up question on the, Tom, go ahead.
Oh, you go. Oh, that's last one.
Yeah, I believe it said there are 1.7 million farmers use FieldView today, roughly that. That's one area I heard that they wants to have more farmers do. Is there any recommendation to think through how do we entertain or how do we engage more farmers to start utilizing this, FieldView plus the FMS recommendation you talked about?
Yeah, so basically 2/3 of our recommendation had to do with, not just helping our current farmers, but getting more farmers. So for example, with the SMS idea, we were kind of not tapping into all of the farmers we could work with because of connectivity issues. And so we believe that having this SMS integration, which doesn't require the same kind of amount of data and like 4G, 5G type connections, could help us have access to a lot more farmers and data points. And then also in places where FieldView is much less feasible, that was where our kind of idea with like another type of funding and possible improvement for carbon came in. So those 2 were really focused at markets we haven't tapped yet.
I think just to add on to that, the main thing we have to be looking at is how do we incentivize farmers to be utilizing FieldView and to engage with Bayer in the first place. And the second part of our recommendation touched a little bit on donor-advised funds and unlocking sort of this private capital and sort of deploying it in a way that's going to enable farmers to be more successful in their agricultural endeavors. And so we felt that, partnership with Bayer and some of these investment companies that manage donor-advised funds, that's going to enable more money to be invested into the lands of these farmers. And, in turn, they might have higher yields. They might, make more profit off of their crop if we give them access to more capital. So that was sort of our thought process to incentivize more farmers to join the Bayer network.
Okay, great. Again, appreciate the presentation, and I've always kind of lived under the maxim that if you and I thought exactly alike, we wouldn't need one of us. So I enjoyed you hitting it from a fresh perspective. It was really nice to see. So I'm going to ask one question, maybe a little bit more in the softer space, and then maybe one on the financial, if that's okay. So on your recommendation, you got a piece on here about donor, kind of in that donor access group, and you also got acquisitions in there. So how do you think about those kinds of recommendations in the context of finding the right types of partners that you're going after, not just at a business maybe fit, but maybe at a culture fit, or maybe at a mission place? How did you guys think or talk about that?
Sure. I can touch on the donor-advised fund part of that. So when we're looking for these sort of partnerships, I think having social impact and ESG in mind is really important in the partners that we're going to work with. So when we were doing our research, Charles Schwab and Fidelity Investments, 2 companies that have a lot of capital by high net worth individuals that's just waiting to be deployed, we felt that their sort of core values, mission, culture sort of aligned with investing in opportunities that are going to have positive social impact. So that's on the donor advised fund side.
Yeah. Oh, I can take sort of on the acquisition end. So obviously an acquisition goes 2 ways, right? So we want to make sure that the companies we acquire, are happy with this acquisition and also gaining from it. And so we believe Biochar is such a small industry right now, and Bayer is very large and has had very successful acquisitions in the past. And so we believe that the two biochar companies that we are looking to acquire have sort of a lot to gain from this acquisition, and therefore I think as long as we structure the acquisition, especially from kind of that softer management perspective, well, which I think Bayer has done well in the past, I think it would be a really kind of smooth integration, especially considering that sort of their goals are aligning with our goals in terms of reducing the carbon emissions. So yeah, I don't know if Rich, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would say especially for the northeastern biochar, just having that patented technology of them already being extra environmentally friendly. I mean, obviously biochar is a product to help combat climate change, but them making their process even more sustainable than it already is. They both use sustainable processes. One just like recycles their energy, and then one also uses little to no oxygen to try to decrease the amount of CO2 output.
Team Tango, thank you so much for your time.